In this first part, I'll be discussing the topic of beginnings and endings from three different angles. First of all, I will explore the notion from the perspective of the laws of motion, inertia and its counterpart gravity, acceleration as it relates to momentum, and action, reaction. Then I'll explore the topic from the angle of warming up and cooling down, with the flow graph as illustration and the analogy of a rocket ship, as well as the ascent up and down a mountain to illustrate the idea further. To begin, the natural laws of motion in the form of inertia and gravity, action, reaction, and acceleration or momentum can be used as perfect analogies to better explain why beginnings and endings are inherently so difficult to initiate and conclude. Newton's laws of motion apply not only to the meticulous realm of physics and mathematics and science, but also to the more practical realm of life on Earth, including your everyday life. Both in the physical sense and more importantly in the mental sense, these natural laws act upon you to make gaining and losing momentum difficult, especially in terms of the beginning and the end. First of all, we have the law of inertia or the inertia of resistance, which is the physical and mental form that energy takes on when it is static. Because of this inertia, the beginnings of all things, both physically and mentally, appear to be difficult at first. This is why the first step of getting into your rhythm, your routine, or your flow from no foundations is always the hardest. It's like having to move a large boulder or get a standstill merry-go-round spinning. The inertia of the mass to remain where it is considerable, so it's quite the challenge to get it moving. Because of this, you usually need a lot of energy to overcome the inertia of your reluctance or your resistance before you can ever gain the momentum necessary to get going. But once you do get some initial momentum, you'll also be harder to stop. A quick example would be the inertia of your old ways. For example, the inertia that you build up as you let your health deteriorate due to ignorance, neglect, or as a way to escape or cope with a difficult life situation. In this scenario, the more unhealthy or out of balance you become, the harder it will be for you to get healthy or regain balance in your life once again. However, the beauty of it is that once you become and then remain aware of the inertia that you need to overcome, you'll also stop comparing yourself to others. Now you'll be able to come to terms with the fact that you're a work in progress rather than a finished masterpiece. Now you'll be able to accept the fact that you face a different challenge from others on your journey to becoming a better version of yourself. When you acknowledge your own unique inertia, you'll no longer have the tendency to compare your progress to others because now you understand that the inertia that you face is different from theirs. Where once you might have given up after seeing no real results over a period of days, weeks, or even months, now you'll be able to appreciate the fact that real change takes time, especially when you're shouldering a heavier burden than others, both literally and figuratively in terms of inertia. The interplanetary constant of gravity is simply the cosmic expression of this inertia on a massive scale as it relates to the planets and the stars. Then we have the law of acceleration as it relates to momentum. Momentum which you experience as the flow state. Momentum is the exquisitely glorious payoff or reward that you experience for the hard labors and efforts you put forth in order to overcome the inertia of resistance. This momentum makes itself known in many forms, the greatest of them all being the supreme flow state. A state where you are at the height and peak of your physical, mental, and spiritual powers and awareness. This is where you experience it as the peak performance, where you're in the zone, where you're in tune with your subconscious, or where even when you're inspired or something along those lines. I'll talk more on the flow state later on when I discuss the flow graph. Last of all, we have the law of action and reaction as it relates to the importance of first and last impressions. This law finds its expression in the butterfly effect, as it were, meaning that in one way or another, your beginnings and endings tend to have an equal and opposite effect on your endings and beginnings. By this, I mean that a good beginning will usually result in a good ending, where a poor beginning tends to result in a poor ending, especially in terms of impressions. In this regard, the power of first and last impressions is tremendous because how you begin your journey or undertaking and how you end it tends to define and determine how it is perceived or seen by others. The first act and the last act has a disproportionate influence on whether or not you view it favorably, positively, or unfavorably, negatively. The beginning in the form of the introduction and the end in the form of the conclusion are the most important parts of the work. This is because the start lays out the foundations for your future outlook and attitude, whilst the end is what defines the meaning and value of it all. For this reason, it is said that first and even last impressions are lasting, meaning that you tend to rely most heavily on the beginning and the end of a journey, a chapter, to determine whether or not the experience was worthwhile, pleasant, enjoyable, or it was unpleasant. Because of this, it's crucial that you always seek to make the best first impressions. Always strive to put your best foot forward, try your best, always do your best, so that you can leave a good impression on all those who come into contact with you, be it a friend, a crush, a relative, or more holistically in terms of starting any endeavor, for example, embarking upon the next chapter of your life. Just as important, if not more important, is the value of last impressions or endings. At the end of the day, how you end the journey is ultimately how you will be remembered, regardless of whether it is on a positive, high note or a negative, low note. In this regard, the view at the top of the summit has to be worth the journey and climb of getting up there in terms of the time, energy, and resources it takes you to get up there. Otherwise, you will inevitably feel let down, disappointed, or even betrayed. The reason that you naturally tend to put such a huge amount of emphasis on the final act is because you invest a big portion of your time, energy, and attention on that journey. As a result of this investment, you hold big expectations that the conclusion will justify all the time you spent on that journey as rewarding and worthwhile, rather than disappointing and worthless. To demonstrate what I mean, let's explore the notion that you judge value based on beginnings, but more importantly, on endings. The beginning is quite self-explanatory. So long as the beginning, the introduction, the first act captivates or holds your attention and causes you to become invested, you will have a vested interest in the journey or what will happen next. This is the halo effect of first impressions, whereby a positive beginning biases and enhances your future perceptions towards that journey, person, or experience. For this reason, a thing well begun is usually a thing half done, meaning that a good beginning makes it that much easier to accomplish and therefore end the journey in its entirety. Now, when it comes to endings, a great experience, a great book, a great show, movie, speech, relationship, and so on and so forth is heavily reliant on the final act for the best reception, or how you tend to remember it, and is otherwise ruined if the ending ends up being subpar, lackluster, or disappointing because it didn't live up to your expectations. For example, a very good tip when it comes to public speaking is to always finish with a joke. Ending on a joke is very crucial because it serves to define the quality of your speech as a whole, where the joke serves to trick your audience into thinking that they've had fun the whole time. The notion of endings in terms of last impressions is evident in so many walks of life, from people, businesses, brands, organizations, books, shows, so on and so forth, who end up ruining the reputation that they've carefully amassed over years and years, over the span of a few days or weeks, because of the final impression they leave on you through whatever wrong or erroneous action it may have been. This notion of last impressions is perfectly encapsulated in the saying that it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and less than a day for that very same reputation to be ruined and to come crumbling down. Think of all the books, movies, shows, brands, companies, and people, and so on, who were the talk of the town one day and then looked down upon the next. Take, for example, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, whose conclusion was rushed independently of the source material, where the final books weren't even written, is the case study of how a primetime TV show failing to end on a high note left most, if not all, fans feeling betrayed. It's like being heavily let down by the inadequate or downright bad ending of a great piece of media or literature. For example, let's take a movie, which you were very hyped about and excited to watch in the moment, but in the end, you're left very frustrated because the great build-up of lore throughout the movie is at once ruined by an underwhelming conclusion. You expected better, but your expectations were just not met, and you felt like you and the story deserved a better send-off. You can add whatever other experience or journey that you once regarded very highly, but don't anymore, and the truth still remains. You're naturally inclined and biased to rely upon the end or the outcome to formulate your overall opinion or impression of the journey or experience. This is one of those reasons why you should be very reluctant towards experiencing new, highly regarded and highly rated things in the form of content, be it books, movies, shows, and so on and so forth. This is because in order for your time to be well spent on that journey, that experience has to have a track record of being highly regarded, especially for the finale. Otherwise, there won't be any real payoff or reward for all that time, energy, and attention you invested throughout that experience or journey. A very practical application and takeaway from this notion of beginnings and endings as it relates to first and last impressions is to bookend your morning and nighttime routine so that you always start and finish the day strong. For the saying goes that if you don't run the day, aka start the day off with you in control and with your priorities front and center, then the day will run you. Meaning that if you win the first hour of the day, then you usually win the day as a whole. Having said this, it should be your number one priority to bookend your morning and nighttime routine so that you're the one who determines whether you start or end the day on the right foot or on the wrong foot, aka to start it off on a positive and empowering note. Here are some powerful ways that you can start and finish your day off with you in control, aka how to start and end your day off on the right foot. First of all, make it a habit to remove all distractions, especially your phone, from your room an hour before you sleep and an hour after you wake up. Then do your bathroom business, drink water, go for a brief 10-minute walk to take in the beautiful fresh air and the sunlight that you find outside. When you return, do some stretches, eat a light breakfast, and get started on your tasks for the day. Make sure that you work hard first, then give yourself a well-deserved break to reward yourself with distractions, entertainment, food, or whatnot. Your motto for life should always be to work hard and then play. Lastly, before you go to sleep, try to go for a brief night walk to clear your mind while you breathe in some beautiful fresh air. Then, when you get back, plan for the next day in terms of the things that you need to do. After this, do some light stretches, do your bathroom business, and then unwind by reading a book that helps to calm your mind, preferably fiction or something that helps to quiet your mind. The best thing about bookending how your day starts and ends is that you no longer have to use up your precious mental resources to think about or decide on what you should or shouldn't be doing, because now it becomes automatic. Now your mind simply goes on autopilot mode. Your morning and nighttime routine helps to free up your precious time and mental energy so that you can focus your time and energy on the important things that really matter to you. The value of bookending your morning and night routine will make more sense later on in the series when you learn about the challenges that come with waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night. I'll explore these laws of motion in more detail in the next section, where I'll be illustrating the flow graph to you with the analogy of the rocket ship as an example.